So I did this video in a few different sections. It is very difficult to talk about certain things when it's personal on video like this, when you know it's going to be so public. But I've wanted to do a video like this for a long time, and mostly to glorify my Father, Jesus, to show what He brought me through, all the things that He brought me through. And I feel I owe that to Him, and so much more. And I'm always doing things to please Him. I always aim to please Him in everything I do. Thoughts, words, actions, to keep it consistent. I don't go into too much depth about certain things in the video. These are things that I wrote about before in my book. In the very first book I self-published, when I read it back now, because it was written, I think it was 11 years ago. When I read it now, I think how much I've changed so much since then, and how much I've learned since then. And there's some bits in the book I thought I could have said more in that, and wish I didn't say that, and things like this. It's never going to be perfect, but there's also things I left out of the book which I didn't put in there, which are painful too. I didn't write about certain things, but I just wanted to start this off talking about my mum, who took her own life shortly after I turned 13, and my brother was 14. She struggled massively with her mental health for years. I remember when she was in a psychiatric hospital, and she just had these episodes building up to that. She had, I'm not sure if she was ever officially diagnosed. I don't know of any diagnoses, but I know she must have had generalized anxiety disorder, and she had chronic depression. I'm not sure what else was going on, but she was in so much suffering and pain and struggling to get through life. And my brother and I, we saw her go through so much turmoil. And I remember I used to see her cry a lot, and I just felt so helpless. She was a really sweet mum, and I think even after all these years, I'm really trying. Even after all these years, it's been 29 years since she left. They say time heals, but there is certain things time really doesn't do anything. Like, it's certain things like the loss of a mother, and I can't imagine what it must be like to lose a child. That must be the most painful thing out of everything. I know people have been through so much worse, but there's certain losses in life time doesn't, yeah, it gets easier, but it doesn't heal. Those wounds will never fully heal. Like the loss of my mother, 29 years later, after her death, and I'm 42 and I still find it so painful to talk about. Really, really painful. Yeah, there was times, you know, when I had my son, when I really wish, when I had my sons, their births, that I really wish my mother could have been there. There's times in your life when, you know, you really need your mother there. Even though she struggled with lots and lots of different things, and it was really difficult for us, the way life was, myself and my brother, it was really, really difficult. Despite all her challenges, she was the most caring, protective, lovely mother. She really was. And the way she is, the way she was, has made me a great mother to my kids. What I remember from her, so caring and protective. And I remember she would always say to me, "Who loves you more than anything in the whole world?" And she would always say it all the time. She always made me feel so loved, and she always made sure that we knew how much we were loved. She would say, "Who loves you more than anyone in the whole world? Who loves you more than anyone?" And the little things she would do, she was very overprotective. She was terrified something would happen to us. She was really paranoid about that. She was terrified of losing us. She was really, really overprotective of us. And she was extremely thoughtful, extremely kind and generous. And if she saw someone on the street and they needed something, she would give that person her last, whatever it was, amount of money to make sure they were okay. That's the kind of person she was. That's the kind of person she was. Extremely generous. She would help anyone. If anyone was in trouble in the street, she would not walk past like some people would just walk by. She was not the kind of person who would just turn a blind eye to things. She would be right there helping. She would always help people. She really was. Even if it meant getting herself in trouble, she would make sure she did the right thing no matter what. That's the kind of person she was. So, even though it was really painful, God's brought us through it. My brother and I, he really did. And he blessed me with a wonderful brother. And then years later, 2 wonderful children, 2 gorgeous sons, my lovely gifts. And I'm deeply, 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 deeply grateful for them. I really am. I'm very, very blessed. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the video and find some comfort in this whole video. Gradual one to get to this point where I am today. It really took years and years. You know, there was like a huge build up. It was such a slow process of getting to know him and really learning what he's like and how he works. When I was younger, when I was going through a lot of horrible things, in some really dark places, I used to really yearn out to the Lord, and I sought him on my own from a really young age when I was going through certain things, and I used to cry out to him. I thought he was ignoring me. I really didn't understand him, and I just thought I was being ignored. And even though I come from a Roman Catholic background and my grandparents' whole family background's very religious, I really did seek the Lord on my own, going through some really dark times. Myself and my brother had a really dysfunctional childhood, and we had to grow up really quick. We saw a lot of things we shouldn't have seen, and heard a lot of things we shouldn't have heard, and it was just really chaotic, and it was quite confusing also. Then when my mother died, we went in a children's home, and after that, I would say it was about 4 years when we left the home. We spent 4 years there. After that is when I really started to just become a bit of a mess for a little while, and I felt quite lost and didn't really know which way to go, because I had all this independence from a really young age, and I just kind of went wild with it. And there was times I felt incredibly lonely also, even though at the time the only person I had was my brother. We've always been so profoundly close. Understandably, he had his own life as well to live. We couldn't be together all the time. He had work, and I kind of went off with friends and was up to no good, and made some mistakes really young. I'm actually glad I made them so young, because they really were. What happened to me, the consequences of that was, it really was a deterrent. It really worked for me. I mean, the punishment served its purpose, and I didn't look back. I didn't keep making the same mistakes over and over again like I see lots of people do. I really did. It was a wake-up call, and it was a scary time. When I was 16, 17, I spent half a year in prison, and I know God was protecting me. I know he was. I mean, it was a really difficult time. I didn't get any problems from anyone in there or anything like that. It wasn't like that. It was just a case of losing freedom and really missing my brother so deeply. I found that really painful and hard, and it really did humble me. I went to some of the darkest places in my mind, and like I really woke up when I was in there. I thought, what? I've been such an idiot. What have I been doing? And it really opened my eyes, and I sought the Lord also in there. I did a lot. I really did. And I was so young, and it was just so, it felt like just such a long time being in there. Time goes very, very slow. But when I came out, I felt like a different person, really and truly. I can't explain it. It was really liberating, and a blessing in disguise. Yeah, because if I had kept going the way I was going before, who knows, something worse may have happened. So it was a blessing in disguise, and a humongous wake-up call. Made me a better person 100 times. Really did. Yeah, and walking out was extremely liberating. But afterwards, I met a much older guy, and I was young. Even though people always told me I was smart, I was kind of naive to this person who, sometimes you really don't know people that well. They make out there's something and they're just something totally different. But I fell into some things in that relationship and it wasn't good. I sought solace in the wrong place there. And subconsciously I was looking for a father figure in that person. And they were just very nasty. But at the end of that, when I was a bit older, when that finished, I really felt that relationship taught me a huge amount, and I did learn a lot. So it was, again, liberating at the end of it. And I felt like, you know, like I'd just really been through the ringer with that relationship. And I find it hard to, even though when I was in it, I find it really difficult and hard to break away from it. It was extremely, at the end of it, it was acrimonious. But when it was over, I didn't do that much crying when it was over, because I did all the grieving within the relationship because it was so painful. And then I kind of moved on from then. I had my own place by that stage anyway, so I got to a point where I wasn't feeling lonely anymore. I was really enjoying my own company. I would just sit in my flat and read books. And I guess that's when the introversion really started kicking in, when I was about in my late teens. Yeah, I remember I would just sit there in my flat and read books for hours and hours and hours in the evenings. And that really did become my own best company. And it took a really long stage to get there, to that point. And not long after that, I became pregnant with my first child. And the father, this man, let's just say that didn't work out. He wasn't the person I thought he was. He just turned out to be a cop-out, so. But anyway, that's another story. But I knew I was 100% strong enough to have a child of my own, and I felt ready by that point, really ready. Because when I was 17, I had a termination, and I knew at that point I was not ready. That was just incredibly young, and I was not ready. But when I got to the point where I was pregnant the second time with my eldest, my firstborn, I was really, really ready for that, and really delighted to be pregnant. And I knew that I would be staying at home. I would be 100% devoted to him. I wouldn't be going out, drinking or this. I'd already done all that before, years before. So I was really ready to be a mum. So fast forward a few years, and myself and my son, we moved near a lovely house right next door to a church. And it always makes me smile because God really knew what he was doing when he moved us next to a church. And he really does plan things perfectly, and how things just effortlessly fall into place for the greater good. And when we moved next door to this church, I also sent my son to a Catholic school, so he began his own relationship with the Lord. And I was going to church all the time on my own and with my son as well. And when he was at school, I would pop in. I got to know the priest, and I really became close with the priest. He was such a lovely, lovely man, and life became really pleasant and peaceful and fulfilling. And it was nice to have this little community next door to us. And we have, we had our little routine, and I remember going to confession, and I was confessing things, and I just felt so much relief after, and I really did become so much closer to the Lord. I was reading books, Doreen Virtue's book, Mornings with the Lord, and that book taught me so much. I can't even explain it. And her books, The Joy of Jesus, and which came much after, but I just really became so in love with getting to know God and the comfort and love he was giving us. And it was all just so peaceful, because it was just so nice to have that, because things were so difficult in the past. I'd always struggled with my mental health, with depression and anxiety. I remember I've had quite a few bouts of really bad depression and anxiety, like quite horrific ones, and I remember when I was in my late teens, or sometime in my teens, my anxiety was so bad, and I didn't see an end to it really, but then it became okay for a while, and the anxiety always did come back. But having a relationship with the Lord, and when you feel so overwhelmed with distress and worries, and struggling with uncertainty, can be really difficult. But leaning in him and resting in him gives us permission to just really lay back, and we must give him our worries. He doesn't want us to carry those burdens, because they can be too much to carry. It's too much. He doesn't want us to live like that. He has plans for us to prosper and not to harm us, and to fight for us, and to take our worries. We don't know everything that will happen to us, but he does. And he is the best planner. And at this moment in my life, I've come to realize, when I plan things, before I plan anything, I talk to the Lord first. I ask him to bless my plans, our plans for our family, our future. He's the one in control. Our plans rest in him. He's in control of everything. And I'm so grateful for him. I really am. And my youngest son, he is 9 now. My oldest son, he's 20 this year, but my youngest son, he's 9. and he's at a Catholic school, and he has this relationship with the Lord. And when he comes home, you know, I always prompt him to say his prayers, but he does them independently also, which is really beautiful to see. And he's so sincere, and his relationship with Jesus is so beautiful. And I'm saying to my children, I always say to them, it's so important to talk to God in your life. Whenever you feel any kind of way, just pray, talk to God, you know, and he'll give you comfort. Never stop believing in him. Never stop having faith, no matter what. And I always want my kids to turn to God in their lives, and to never, ever, ever turn away from him, no matter what happens. That's so important, that my children always have a relationship with God. And when I'm long gone, he is the one who's going to be looking out for them in their lives. He's the one that's going to be there when their hairs go grey, when they're older. He will be there every single step of the way for them. And I'm really grateful for that. I really am. It's just so important to put God first in everything. And for my children to always put God first. So, I think I've covered a lot of things I wanted to say. And also, I wanted to say that I'm just so grateful, immensely grateful for having Jesus and his precious Father, Holy Spirit, or Holy Trinity, Holy Spirit, Mary, angels, saints. I am so grateful for everything, for my family, for what I have, for the love of the head of our family, God. I am so grateful, and I express my gratitude every single day, and I never ever take anything for granted. I never take anyone for granted. Every day is a gift. I never take my family for granted, ever. I always pray for their protection, and I'm just, words can't really touch how grateful I am. And I just feel really humbled, and a relationship with God and my family is my purpose. It's what I live for. And at 42, I've learned quite a lot. And I enjoy the little things. I'm grateful for the little things in life. I just think it's so important not to take anyone for granted, not to take anything for granted, and to just show gratitude. Life's not always easy, you know, it's not, but it's not meant to be all plain sailing, happy days all the time. With me, I think, even though I had a challenging childhood, and also through the years dealing with difficult people, I'm grateful for the experiences that God brought me through it. But I pray my children will never have to go through anything that I've been through. I really pray they won't ever have to go through anything like that. I think with me as well, like, a lot of the battle has been in my mind. Bad things have happened, but also the battle is in the mind sometimes. So just to wrap up the video, I didn't really touch on every single thing I wanted to talk about because I think that would just take hours of filming, but I just went over some of the highlights and from the beginning, and also at the beginning when I was talking about my mum when she passed away. That was a really painful time, and it was a really lonely time, and I didn't really give myself permission to grieve for her. I spent a lot of time being angry about it. That's also one of the stages of grief, anger. Spent a lot of time feeling like that, more than anything. Now then I'm 42, I'm finally in therapy for that, to talk about her. So it's taken a long time because I never wanted to really talk about it. When I wrote about it in my book, that was a form of self-therapy for me, and it was really validating to do that, and helpful for me. So that was the only other time I really did pour into those feelings and memories, reflecting on everything that happened, introspection. But Jesus was always there, and he'll always be there every step of the way, through it all, and I'm really grateful for that. He understands each of us better than anyone on this planet ever will understand, and he truly loves us and cares so deeply, and he'll never ignore you, never. Every single prayer gets answered. It never goes unheard. May not be in the way we want it, but it will be in his perfect will. That's how things will happen. And I feel very blessed. Very, very blessed. It's never luck, it's always God. It's always God's grace. Always. And I'm really grateful for that. I didn't really touch on everything I wanted to say, but I'm happy with the way it's gone and what I've said. And remember that each of us are God's little sunshines. Remember that. And you're so, so important. God loves you very much. Your worth is found in God, not in the opinions of others. God is our source. He's everything. And we should always put him first. Always. And if you're struggling with any of the feelings that I've talked about in this video, like depression or anxiety, I would recommend reaching out to a health professional for that. Because I'm now in therapy, talking about my mum, and I'm enjoying it. It's painful, but I'm actually happy to talk about it, and it's really helping. So thank you for watching.